Tales of the Jersey Shore is made possible in part by a generous grant from Greenwich Letterpress, proud third-generation printers with their roots in the Garden State. Greenwich Letterpress is pleased to support programming like this and to assist in documenting the history of their beloved Jersey Shore. Located in historic Greenwich Village, New York, more at greenwichletterpress.com.
Hi, I'm Emil Salvini, author and historian, and these are Tales of the Jersey Shore. I'm in Belmar, New Jersey, standing by what had once been a beautiful boardwalk that we documented just last summer, holding a piece of it right in my hand. As you can see, they're rebuilding after Superstorm Sandy destroyed a good part of the Jersey Shore. This is a tale, a somber tale, about Superstorm Sandy and other storms that took place over the last 100 years that decimated the Jersey coastline. It's also a story about hope and the people that call the Jersey Shore their home. We're fortunate today to be able to share with you photographs taken both by helicopter and on the ground by talented New Jersey photographer Tim Sharkey. We hope you find this an interesting tale. Records indicate that soon after the American Revolution, those that could afford to began to enjoy the Jersey Shore. It did not take long for these early residents to realize that building so close to King Neptune's lair could come with a heavy price. While storms were numerous, occasionally a 100-year or even a 300-year event could take place. The Great Atlantic Hurricane of 1944, the Nor'easter or Ash Wednesday Storm of 1962, and 2012's Superstorm Sandy were the heavyweights of storms, and each one left a permanent mark on the Jersey Shore. First detected on September 9, 1944, northeast of the Leeward Islands, it was quickly dubbed the Great Atlantic Hurricane by meteorologists. Prior to the 1950s, we had not begun the practice of naming these storms. The old-timers that had seen many storms in their day knew that New Jersey was in for a night of uncharted terror. The Great Atlantic Hurricane of 1944 would be remembered as the most horrific and destructive 20th century storm to strike the coast of New Jersey, until the next one came along.
About 4 days before Sandy came to our shores, we started tracking its progress up the East Coast. We were on a conference call at the governor's office, and someone from the National Weather Service was on, and at the end of everything he said, he summed it up this way: this will be a storm unlike anyone alive has ever seen before. And he was dead right.
Before the storm came, we kind of knew, batten down the hatches, because they said it on the news quite often. I mean, it was 2 weeks' notice.
We started to pre-plan for the storm probably several weeks before, and we certainly understood the gravity of the situation. Everybody kept saying it was going to be the storm of the century and all that, and I don't know what the storm of the century means. I do now. I didn't then.
Just had a feeling that this is, with a 10% chance going out to sea, this was going to change the Jersey Shore as we knew it, and as it has.
When I got there, my friend John was like, "Listen, dude, we're going to get hit," and people were bunkering down. Everything I left was gone.
Well, the day of the storm, October 29th, I was in constant contact with our OEM, toured the town with them prior to the storm hitting us, and in the afternoon the waves were breaking over the bulkhead, so we knew it was going to be bad. We just didn't know it was going to be as bad as it was.
I mean, we were preparing. I think we did the things that we needed to do as proof of that there was no loss of life. So we had taken the precautions. We did get ready for the storm itself.
Well, we heard the weather forecast, my fiance and I, and we had 18 inches of water with Irene last year, because I was just very upset that another storm was coming in a year's time from the last flood we had.
And at that point, we had heard from some of the weather forecasters that this might be the biggest storm that they've ever seen in their lifetime, and maybe in any of the people that were broadcasting their lifetimes.
Once we heard that, we took a look at our flood maps and realized that with the storm surge predicted and the rain predicted, we would have 75% of the town flooded.
The intent and the concerns started to really grow, that there was a very good chance that this monster of a perfect storm would come and possibly devastate our coastline and our neighborhood and the Jersey Shore as we know it.
I think a lot of people took it lightly because the year prior with Hurricane Irene, it was, get the hell off the beach, and it was really, it really amounted to, nothing. I mean, we had a lot of water in the basement and stuff like this, but it wasn't as bad.
I did not take the storm lightly. I didn't blow it off like in Irene, because I saw it was kind of like they were saying there's 2 or 3 storm fronts. We had the high tide, the full moon, and immediately thought of the Perfect Storm movie. And it was still more devastating than I ever imagined.
For the last 20 years, I've been telling my wife, I says, one of these years we're going to get a bad storm, we're going to lose a lot of people because people aren't afraid. Because all the storms we've had, they usually weaken by the time they hit us. You get all the warnings and they weaken and people aren't as feared as they should be.
It was still hard to believe that this storm was not going to turn out, because it always turns out to sea. It always does.
Because a week prior I was in Jupiter, Florida, racing in an offshore race, had no idea that this storm was coming up. And then by midweek, when I was back home, this storm was coming up and the forecasts were like, this is gonna hit.
Sandy was just a bad time for my family and my friends.
I've lived here for 45 years. I've never had any kind of flooding issues, weathered some pretty serious storms in the past. And, we take some precautionary measures, to move some furniture from one floor to the next, relocated cars to some higher ground, and, did some minor preparation, never thinking it was going to be as it was.
One of the things that we really did was we knew this was going to be a big storm. We didn't know how big it was going to be, but we knew it was going to be big. And so we were set up early on. We've got a pretty good Office of Emergency Management here. We do a lot of drills in town. We're a pretty big town. And since we have more waterfront property than any other town in the state of New Jersey, one of the drills that we do is on hurricanes and big major storms.
And it was kind of a shell shock because we really didn't know what to expect, and we weren't used to what was going on at that time.
I don't think that anybody's ever lived through it being that severe, but I think everybody kind of knew, man, this is going to be, one for the record books.
Our fire company was called out to be on standby for the storm, which puts us into situations where we would help out.
I remember going outside just to see how bad it was, and the sky was just lighting up green and blue with transformer fires, or transformers blowing all over the place.
The sky just lit up blue and, all kind of different crazy colors.
We're helping the borough people with trees falling in the ground, falling in the streets, and we were also there in case there were any evacuations to be done for people who decided they were going to stay, but finally decided that they didn't want to stay anymore.
Walked out the front door. By the time I hit the second step, I was shin deep in water. So in a matter of 15, 20 minutes, there was 2 foot of water in the street in front of my house.
They let us have a lot of notice, and a lot of people heeded it, and a lot of people didn't.
It was a frightening time in the state's history, as over 2 million households lost their power, 350,000 homes were damaged or destroyed, and 34 people lost their lives. It is estimated that Hurricane Sandy cost the state of New Jersey up to $30 billion in economic loss. Governor Chris Christie said the losses caused by Sandy were going to be almost incalculable. The devastation on the Jersey Shore is probably going to be the worst we've ever seen. As the storm approached, there were both mandatory and voluntary evacuation orders all along the New Jersey coastline. The government recognized the severity of the storm, and President Obama signed an emergency declaration for New Jersey. Sandy made landfall south of Atlantic City on October 29th.
It was unbelievable. And when the storm was finally over and we started to look into, trying to help people get their act together, there was still a lot of water in the town. There was nothing but emergency vehicles. There was, all the people around were, basically in shock, didn't know what to do.
Watching the news after the storm was gut-wrenching. You'd see, the fires in Mantoloking and the homes that were destroyed, and I didn't know how my house fared.
I've been on many of catastrophes in my 30-year career of being a firefighter. I thought that I've seen it all, if not most of the worst, at a time when nobody really knew what we were up against and what we were about to face.
Then the determination had come down with the governor and New Jersey Natural Gas had just said the ruptures were too great, and gas was, the smell of gas in our town the stench was unbelievable. So they shut the pipeline down.
It was a very difficult time for us, but when we actually got to our home, which was 2 days after the storm, we put our waders on, and that was very devastating. That was so surreal to me because I didn't know what was going on and seeing all the devastation.
With regard to our house, the first time I think we saw the 4 to 5 foot of sand surrounding our house, and what we thought at the moment was really devastation. And then 2 days later, we got to walk down the beach into Bayhead. The folks in Bayhead, when we walked down, we saw 25% of the homes gone, or with white X's on them to be demolished. That hurt.
The storm hit and it came in so fast. To me, it was like a tsunami, the way the water came in.
And we walked down to the house and I could see the high water mark. I had 5 feet of water in the house. It was halfway up the windows. I'm glad I didn't even think of staying because I don't know what I would have done.
And the devastation is unbelievable. And the next morning when I walked around town, after the tears, and hugging a lot of people, and it was unbelievable, the damage. I've seen it on TV and Katrina and storms that hit Florida and devastation, but I've never seen it with my own 2 eyes in my own hometown. It was very sad.
Our first time on the island, everybody knows of the LBI shack. It's an old clam shack on Bonnet Island. I had previous knowledge that had gotten wiped out, and to see that for the first time coming over the causeway and seeing that was gone, and then just beyond that, boats lining Route 72 onto the island that had just washed over onto Bonnet Island. It was just amazing.
It was freezing cold in my house. We didn't have no electricity, no light, no anything, and it was freezing cold in my house. And then we went to go get gas, looking everywhere for gas. We couldn't find gas for at least 2 days.
The water went right to my front door. Amy and I always joked about, I don't have flood content insurance. And she would say, do you think we need content insurance for flood? And I said, Amy, if the water ever gets this high where I need to have contents, our whole neighborhood will be gone. You know what? My whole neighborhood's gone.
I felt that I had to get home. So I decided to take a chance and see what Ocean Avenue looked like. Just as I made that decision and started to make the turn, I heard a noise and I looked over my shoulder side, and all I saw was a wall of water. And it came over and it just blew me down the road. It came over my truck and pushed me down, actually it was Lincoln Avenue in Avon.
I've had structural engineers and architects come and look at it, and one of the hardest decisions for me to make is the fact that it's going to have to be torn down.
I gave a good look out towards the north, where my home and my neighborhood, my friends that are more than friends, they're extended family, where they were. And I just prayed every time I went over the bridge. Keep my friends and my family safe.
It was frightening. It was horrifying. But you know what? You think about You think about all the older people, all the people with kids, you know. It was horrifying. Very scary for them.
You think it was just simple, that it was just water. It wasn't. Everything was floating. There were decks floating. There were garbage cans. There was tons of debris in the water.
In the meantime, I had called my son. I tried to call my wife and let her know what happened. I called my son. And I honestly, in talking to him, the water kept rising and rising and rising. And I really believe that there was a distinct possibility that I was not going to get out of it.
This 1 hour special on Sandy is not just about devastation. We're looking at real life people live along the Jersey Shore, not necessarily first responders, but people that help their neighbors. They're the real heroes of this story.
I received a phone call, and it was from a friend who happened to be staying at my house during the storm. And he said, we have a little problem. And he said, we have a few people who I know very well that stayed in their homes, and they're up in their attics right now and have no way out. There's no one here to rescue them because my fire company was busy with other rescues, and there was just nobody available to do anything. At that point, I directed them to get a rowboat, and I have an outboard motor, and I asked them to put that motor on the boat and see what they could possibly do.
And as we were there, people heard the boat engine. And all we heard was people yelling, help us, help us. And we were like, wow, I can't believe there's that many people.
Shoreacre residents and close friends, Chris Segarra and John Coons, gave new meaning to the word good neighbors.
Again, people were just yelling, help us, and we were just going from house to house to house and putting people on the boat.
The first rescue we took out, the woman and her husband, we pulled up to the house, and this was our first experience. You know, the first people were putting on this boat, so we really didn't know how we were going to do it. The water was, they opened their door, and the water was up to the top of the porch. They were so thankful when we pulled them out. I don't even remember their names.
Jack and Diane. Jack and Diane.
When we got them out, that was like, they had a little bag, and that was it. And their house still was abandoned to this day. And then next thing you know, we were out there about 12 hours, 12, 13 hours back and forth and house to house and navigating, and we couldn't, we had to dodge fences. We couldn't see anything. We didn't know where anything was.
But there was one house that we couldn't get to because of the debris. It's a dead-end street. In fact, it's where I live. It's a dead-end street. All the debris from people's decks that broke off clogged the end, and we couldn't get down the street. So we had to make a decision, again with this little boat, to go out to the bay and circle around and come back in through the other end of the dead-end street. The bay was choppy. This boat was not meant to go out in the bay, and we knew it was dangerous. We knew that, again, every move had to be calculated. We knew we had to be careful because it wasn't even the fact of going to get the people on the boat. Then we had to get them, more weight on the boat, out to safety.
I lost communications. I couldn't get in touch with my family, couldn't get in touch with my friends. And I just hoped for the best and prayed that I made the right decision by sending them out.
At that point, all we were worrying about was, search and rescue.
Had to react.
And get people,
Yeah, we couldn't, in the beginning, we couldn't find life vests. I didn't want to bring that up, but we couldn't find life vests. But again, it would have been just another excuse of why we can't do this, and we couldn't have excuses.
Right.
We had to.
There were no excuses.
Yeah, we had to help people. We have an elderly gentleman in the neighborhood. We went to his house early on, and we knocked, and we looked in the windows, and there was no sign that anybody was there, so we just assumed he was gone. his family came and got him. We got a phone call from the family, and they said, yes, he wouldn't leave. He is in the house. And Chris and I went back. We knocked on the door. Again, looked in the window, didn't see anything. We went around the back of the house, and the back door was open. And we went in, and we found this gentleman. He had deceased. He didn't make the storm.
You can replace stuff, but you can't replace lives. And we had, you hate to say just one, but we had a gentleman have a heart attack in one of our flooded areas.
Which made us feel bad, but we did try. Every house that we went to that we knocked that didn't answer, we couldn't go in every house. You just assumed there was nobody there.
It could have been much worse. It could have been, hundreds of people dying from a storm of this magnitude. Second largest storm, they say, to hit the country. First largest storm ever to hit the New Jersey, obviously. And it could have been a lot worse.
To see the devastation and their homes in the same despair as a lot of the homes on the barrier island was very hard for me to see.
They say necessity is the mother of invention. Brick Township resident Bernie Newhouse came up with a unique idea to save his neighbors.
At that point in time, there was already some people on the sides of the road, gathering, trying to figure out what was going on. This was 10 o'clock that night. So I got out of the truck, and I looked, and the water was coming out of the floors because there was water in the vehicle from the depth. And I called him up, and I said, Brian, listen, not for nothing, catch or no catch, it's time to get out of the house. It's bad. So I was on the phone with him for a little bit, and he couldn't, he tried to get out and get in one car and leave, and the truck stalled. His one car stalled in the driveway, couldn't get out. So he managed to get both his cats in a carryall. He forgot the other cat, came down off the curtain rods. And they turned around, and he put him in a carryall. He grabbed a bottle of wine. Him, his neighbor's wife, and their dog went and got in a boat that was in his neighbor's front yard that's been out of the water for 2 or 3 years, mechanical problems. So at that point in time, they sat in a boat, and he's on the phone with me. He's like, listen, what can I do? Got to grab a couple of the trucks from the yard. He says, the roll-offs? It's the only thing I could think of that's tall enough, that's going to have enough height restriction, or not lack of height restriction, to go through the water. So with that, he says, if you think it's going to work, let's give it a shot. 2 2008 full-size Peterbilt triple axle trucks, full-size, basically tractor trailers, but full-length rails to carry dumpsters, roll-offs. So I called a couple of the guys. They met me over the yard. We fired the trucks up, and we came down, and we pulled down Baywood Boulevard. Everybody was all lined up where the roads were flooded. Tapped the air horns a couple times, and I says to one of the people that were standing there, anybody have a stepladder? So they went and grabbed 2 stepladders. We made our way back down through the water. There's people in their windows, can you help us out? Can you help us out as we're driving in there? So we grabbed some personals from everybody, and bags of clothes and whatever they could get, and got the dog and a couple cats and people in the back of the truck. We started making our way out of town. So from about 9:30, 10 o'clock that morning till 6:30, 7 o'clock that night, we ran in and out of every street, down in the Baywood section off of Baywood Boulevard, down in Alameda and St. Lawrence, and went up and down every block. And if there was people that were out and they knew they had people in the house that were stuck and stranded, they gave us addresses. We went to the addresses. And from what we were told, there was probably over 120 or 30 people that were pulled out between these 2 vehicles. There was one resident, she was a cancer patient. She was going through chemo. She was very ill, so we basically rolled her up in a blanket, and 4 of the guys, basically carried her over their shoulder and slid her back up in the back of a dumpster and got her and her husband out of there. It was just pretty, I don't even know what the proper verbiage is. Scary, surreal. You watch it on TV, doesn't do any justice. Not when you're front line.
Superstorm Sandy did not only affect humans, but it also affected silent victims. Our furry little friends, cats and dogs, that were either abandoned or many of them had to find temporary housing while their owners found temporary housing. Sear Farm in Jackson, New Jersey became the temporary home for many of these pets.
We didn't expect at the time that we were going to see 2 major hurricanes, but in fact that's what happened with Hurricane Irene and most recently this year Hurricane Sandy. By now we have 5 years of track record in caring for the animals of families who are going through a life crisis. So we were well placed to receive Sandy animals when Sandy hit. As Sandy started approaching, we began preparing for how Sear Farms was going to respond, and we had a really good idea of what to expect based on the dry run that we got with Hurricane Irene. There was going to be the buildup that we would need to be paying attention to for the storm so that the animals who are currently in our care would be safe. Since Sandy first struck, we have had 227 animals that have passed through our doors that we have cared for, that have been displaced. Of those animals, the vast majority of them have come from Ocean County. That said, we still have seen 40 or so animals that have come to us from Monmouth County. We saw some from Union County. We have animals here from Jersey City, from Staten Island, from Middlesex County, from Atlantic County. So it really is up and down New Jersey as well as Staten Island and New York.
We have to look at New Jersey storm history today as before Sandy and after Sandy. But the next storm to follow, the 1944 hurricane, was another sort of beast. There were almost 70 years between the Great Atlantic Hurricane of 1944 and Superstorm Sandy. Too long a time for the Atlantic to let us forget its unforgiving power. Memories of the 1944 hurricane were fading, and people old enough to remember would call the next big event the Great Atlantic Storm of 1962 the Great Destroyer. A nor'easter, it did not attack New Jersey with the bravado of a full-fledged hurricane, but instead it came quietly to destroy the New Jersey coast and wash centuries of history out to sea. Although the term would not be coined for decades, the 1962 March storm was in meteorological terms a perfect storm. Unlike Sandy, a fast-moving destructive hurricane that left us after only 12 hours, the 1962 nor'easter, like an obnoxious relative, overstayed its welcome by pounding the New Jersey coastline for over 3 days and nights. After the storm departed, many residents of New Jersey woke up to see the destruction Sandy had created overnight. Plans and money were needed to begin the rebuilding process. When we first decided to do an episode on Sandy and other storms of the Jersey Shore, most people said to me, get to Mantoloking. Well, today, thanks to Chief of Police Mark Wright, we are allowed into this town, which has been totally devastated, and the only people permitted in besides the first responders and state police are residents to check on their homes. You'll realize what I mean when I say Mantoloking is ground zero for Sandy on the Jersey Shore. Total devastation. We witnessed firsthand the washover effect where temporary inlets were created and dozens of homes were washed away. Secondary damage, where one home crashes into another, was visible all throughout the community.
We're doing the best that we can. The last couple months we've been doing a lot of work to our infrastructure. We've been doing security, trying to keep people away from certain areas of town that were completely damaged.
We believe, in BRIC's perspective, because of the breach at the Mantoloking Bridge, we believe that several hundred homes would not have flooded, and possibly maybe a couple thousand based on the engineer's estimate, would not have flooded if that breach didn't happen. You know, even in the storm of 1962, some of the areas that we're in town didn't flood during that hurricane. They flooded during this hurricane, and that breach was so big and so deep at the Mantoloking Bridge, it looked like a river, you know, coming from the ocean into the bay for, you know, a couple days after the storm was over.
Although Sandy devastated numerous towns north of Atlantic City, it took particular aim at a select few. Seaside Heights and Seaside Park lost many of their beloved amusements. Behind me are the remnants of Casino Pier and the Jetstar roller coaster. The roller coaster has become an icon of what Superstorm Sandy did to the New Jersey Shore. Pictures of it everywhere, aerial shots. We're very fortunate that we were permitted safely on this deserted beach today. Many people don't realize that at the end of that pier there was also a haunted mansion that is now at the bottom of the Atlantic. They're going to start removing these pieces soon because the plan is in 2013, this summer, to have part of the casino pier operating, and in 2014 to have Funtown back in operation. Walking the deck of Casino Pier that only months earlier was packed with families enjoying themselves was now an eerie and dangerous experience. Our crew required a police escort, and still we had to maneuver through loose planks and holes that led to the sea. Some were hidden by sand. While it might seem reckless, it was the only way to show you the tremendous force of wind and water. I'm standing at the red line in Seaside Heights where very few people are permitted. Behind me are the remnants of the Jetstar roller coaster, the famous shot we've seen across the world. And it goes to show you Superstorm Sandy's power.
The water was moving that night, and it had to be moving about 15, 20 miles an hour up and down the street, so you saw it moving. But just the force of nature, what it can do, and then the way that the ride had actually fallen, it almost like it just sat down, and it stayed in that position. Most people forget there was a two-story haunted mansion on the end of that pier. So about 150 feet of that pier plus that two-story haunted mansion has still not been seen today.
As late as mid-April 2013, some buildings in Casino Pier, Seaside Heights, still have not restored power, so the fate of one of the last surviving hand-carved carousels on the Jersey coast is still a mystery. Seaside Heights Mayor Bill Akers made it clear to the residents that not rebuilding the famous boardwalk would be economic suicide. Out of a $12 million city budget, $7 million comes from tourism.
This is how you balance your budget, through your tourism. This is how you offset all those costs, and it's hard for some people to understand that and grasp that you're talking boardwalk. But listen, I can't get back in my home, and while your heart aches, my responsibility is to do one thing. This community went down as a whole, and I have to bring it back as a whole, but I have to make sure we're financially stable. When we come back, we have a community to come back to. It would be irresponsible on my part not to make sure that we're financially stable. So, and how do we do that? We do the obvious. The boardwalk has to come back. People come here for the boardwalk, the beach. And that's the way we've always made our business model, and we'll continue to do it that way until the voters say, hey, we want to be a different community. And if you tell me that, I'm an elected official. I'm supposed to do what you asked me to do, and I'll do it.
You know, I had the opportunity to travel to past Christiane, Mississippi, between Christmas and New Year's, and I met with their mayor, and they were devastated by Katrina in 2005. So 7 years later, they were still dealing with the effects of it. And one of his pieces of advice to me as the mayor is, you know, listen to your engineers, listen to your architects, and then make a decision. And once you make a decision, stick by it. The mayor gave me a statement which is a perfect quote. The water got us in this trouble, and the water is going to get us out of it. We're the same way. You know, the storm surge got us into what's the problem, and it's going to get us out of it because people want to come to see the ocean. They want to come to the beach. They want to come to the boardwalk.
Yeah, we hope to have the beach up and running at least by July. Won't be Memorial Day like Belmar, but we hope to have it by July, and because the beaches gets a lot of action. I mean, a lot of people, and in the summertime, it's unbelievable how packed our beach is.
The small hidden gem of a town, Union Beach, was totally decimated, and unlike amusement-driven or more affluent areas, it will never be the same. I'm in Union Beach, New Jersey, in front of the remains of Jacob Bob's restaurant, a famous spot in town with a little landmark with a tiki bar overlooking the Raritan Bay. Sadly, it's now just a memory.
And the next time I was back out was Thanksgiving Day, and that's when I went to Union Beach and covered Lawrence Harbor and all up in those areas. Union Beach was tough.
I went to a couple other places, so Union Beach was absolutely decimated. I mean, there have 14, 15 contractors just tearing houses down, taking them out. And Belmar, of course, is, you know, I don't think any of these places are ever going to be the same.
And the devastation is unbelievable. And the next morning when I walked around town, I mean, after the tears, you know, and hugging a lot of people, and it was unbelievable, the damage. I've seen it on TV and Katrina and storms that hit Florida and devastation, but I've never seen it with my own two eyes in my own hometown. It was very sad.
There was a lot of devastation in Union Beach. People's homes, entire neighborhood just washed away. Anybody that was up on the front lines of the Raritan Bay, Raritan River. It appeared to me there's a 13 to 15 foot surge that must have came in there and just pushed this whole neighborhood on top of all the homes on the other sides of the streets.
The water didn't come into the Borough Hall or the police station, but the cars in the parking lot were lost. We lost most of our police cars, and whoever parked their car here for safety, it wasn't safe this time.
And we went to Union Beach, where we worked on houses, tearing down walls, helping with the reconstruction process.
Seeing tents set up at the firehouse, people living in these little tiny pump tents, and for such a small community, and who knows if they're ever going to be able to rebuild? Who knows if they're ever going to get back to where they were?
There was two things you saw. You saw total devastation, houses just piled up in a heap, and then you saw some of the more expensive houses that looked to be intact. And the first house we went in, that was the case. You walked in, the house looked fine. You're saying, why are we even here? And then they give you a crowbar and you start ripping up floors and smashing it into the walls. You feel, why am I doing this? Well, when you tear these walls down and you see that there's just tons of this black mold behind these walls that you really don't see, in the floors, in the cabinets.
The beachfront, there's only a couple houses standing, and those are the newer ones that are built. They were built to FEMA standards.
Some residents of Union Beach have already begun the arduous and expensive task of raising their homes to meet the new FEMA requirements. Is this the new look of much of the Jersey Shore?
The new way to build it will work. So our fear is, are people going to be able to afford to rebuild?
The new FEMA flood maps have been a matter of concern for New Jersey residents. The previous maps had been in place since the 1980s and are used so insurance companies can determine rates. They have been released earlier than planned, and many residents mistakenly think they were created for Sandy when they were actually created shortly after Hurricane Irene.
The new FEMA flood maps that came out recently should be taken seriously by anyone and everyone who lives by the water. When you look at the flood maps, they were actually generated before Hurricane Sandy. If you compare them to the areas that were destroyed, devastated by Hurricane Sandy, they're dead on.
You know, one thing this storm did in conjunction with federal law that changed this past summer, the summer prior, is there's no more federal subsidies for flood insurance. So where in the past, you might have been paying, you know, $800, $1,500 a year for flood insurance, that's going away. So if you are below the base flood elevation on where you should be as a home, your flood insurance could go to $10,000, $15,000, $20,000. It's going to be unaffordable for people. So that's the reason why there's really no choice for people to elevate their home. You're going to have to elevate your home or you're not going to be able to afford to live in it.
Of course, if you're carrying a mortgage, you don't have a decision because you have to carry flood insurance. If you don't raise, it'd be like having a second mortgage on your property when these new rates go into play.
Remember, these maps were prior to Sandy. They're from, as you stated, Irene, so People don't realize that these maps weren't made after the storm. These maps were prior to the storm. And they want people to raise their homes. So.
I do understand that it's expensive, but over the long term, it financially would be more beneficial to make the investment now in your property as opposed to either paying exorbitant flood insurance policy premiums or have no flood insurance for your property and have it get devastated again. And if that happens again, there's no guarantee FEMA's going to come in and bail you out a second time.
Residents that experience flooding are now faced with the task of raising their homes 1 foot above flood elevations. The most significant post-Sandy change will be that New Jersey will now use the FEMA maps issued in December. The maps add new areas to the 100-year floodplain or areas where there is a 1% chance of flooding. Some historians say a great leader is defined by historic events. Others say events define the man. During the unprecedented disaster called Sandy, New Jersey's governor, Chris Christie, was there for his state.
I'm counting on the fact that our congressional delegation and the leaders of Congress, while I know they are consumed with fighting and bickering with each other about the fiscal cliff and all these other things, don't forget that people are suffering. People want to rebuild their homes. They want to rebuild their businesses. They want to rebuild their schools. They want to rebuild their state. And they can return to bickering as soon as they get done with the business that is the first responsibility of government, which is protecting the lives and property of its citizens.
You know, Governor Christie came to Belmar the morning after the storm, and Belmar was the first place he came to. Gets off his helicopter, walks right up to me, and shakes my hand. He never said, I'm the governor and you're only the mayor. He never said, I'm a Republican and you're a Democrat. He said, Matt, if there's anything you need, just let me know.
I always like to say this, we have one of the most aggressive governors out of any of the states in the union, and we're lucky to have him.
I'm never a big fan of any politician because it seems like eventually they let you down, but I don't think this guy's gonna. I thought that he came here with a message, a strong message.
I think he's done a great job of trying to represent New Jersey and going there and fighting for the money and stuff like that. I'm really happy that he is coming down here and seeing our little neck of the woods.
I think he did a great job, and I think he was a big inspiration for people because he came in and he, kicked butt and took names and he's done what he said he's going to do.
I think he wasted no time in making the message clear, especially when it came to saving lives, about evacuation, how it's mandatory, you must leave, and if you don't, first responders will not be there to help you. It was a powerful statement. I think it relayed the seriousness of the storm, and I think it saved a lot of lives.
Governor Christie, he's like a hero in my eyes. He's just the guy out there. He's like the bull in the china closet. Whatever is going to make New Jersey best and better and stronger and healthier, that man's out there to do it. It's nonstop action from him.
No matter what he's asked, I mean, he gets it. I mean, he really gets what everyone's going through. He's a knowledgeable man. He's impressive to watch.
But he did what he had to do, and I applaud him for what he did. He took care of his hometown, home state, which is what his first priority should have been, and I believe he did the right thing. And anybody that criticizes him for what he did is, in my opinion, is wrong.
He will get what he wants, and he'll yell and scream, and he advocates for his state the way, we want our governor to advocate.
And he has been true to his word since. He's been back to Belmar several times, and he was here for our groundbreaking when we put the first pile in, and he's committed, and we're going to hold him to his commitment, to be here for our ribbon cutting leading up to Memorial Day this coming summer.
Although they all did admirable jobs in dealing with an unprecedented event, from the governor to local officials, when asked, what would you have done differently? They all looked inward and without hesitation shared their thoughts with us.
I would have got to odd even gas more quickly. I went much quicker than New York did, and I think it calmed everything down here, got everybody going the right way. But I would have made that decision probably 2 days earlier, and I think I would have really lowered some of the stress and tension in the state a lot more quickly. So I probably would have done that differently if I had to do it again.
If there was one thing I could have changed, and I'm not sure if I even could have, it would have been my message for people to evacuate. I tried to be as stern as possible and as serious and forceful, but the fact that we had to risk people's lives the night of that storm because people didn't leave, I think we really did get lucky that we didn't lose anyone.
I think the thing that we found the most frustrating was that people just wanted answers, and that's all they wanted was information. Part of it was that we couldn't get it out effectively enough because of the power problems. The other part was that we didn't have all the answers at first. So once we got them, I think we could have done a better job of getting those things out. And I think communication is the key.
And I think a lot of the things that we've learned, I believe that you really should shut off power when a storm is approaching. We probably wouldn't have lost as many houses as we lost in Brick if it wasn't for the power being on. I think that some other states do it that way.
As the saying goes, those who forget the lessons of history are bound to repeat them. Will we make the right decisions, and will we be prepared?
The people that did ride out the storm will never ride out a storm like this again. And I think for the most part, when people see the pictures and the video, and then they see it in person, I think it really sets the tone of why Mother Nature is very unforgiving, doesn't worry about the size of your house, big, small, rich or poor, black or white, Republican, Democrat. What it does is it comes after everybody equally. And in a situation like this, I think people are really going to heed the warnings to evacuate in the future.
We get storms, but this season was different. And it just seemed like Sandy was the grand finale for 2012.
Unbelievable life-changing experience for everybody. I tell you, everybody east of Main Street knows a lot about each other now. A lot about each other. You got a lot more friends in your life, I can tell you that.
I don't, I'm really not going to be able to look at storms or anything else the same. It has really changed me.
This was a life changer. People, the hurricane parties, I think those days are coming to an end. People found out, no, it's not a party when houses get blown a mile inland. When I think I just read a couple of days ago, there's still 15 or 20 houses unaccountable. They don't even know where they are. There's like 79 boats that are unaccounted for. Things just vanished.
Because of this storm that had come through, that the ocean's been a blessing for all these years. You live by the water and you brag about it and you talk about it, and how lucky are you? And then we have one bad day and it changes 100 years of all the good days.
Well, people call this the perfect storm, but you know what? I don't like that word. I think it was a freaky storm, because perfect is, it was a freaky storm, and hopefully we never ever see it again, because I don't know if we can handle it another time.
Sandy has changed the shoreline as we know it. The entire landscape of the Jersey Shore is going to change as we know it.
While we wish it never happened, I think it's important. I think it shows the character of our community and our state, how we respond and how we rebuild. And we should never forget that.
These photos demonstrate the awesome power of nature and are eerily similar to the millions of photos we have been seeing of Hurricane Sandy's destruction. It happened in 1944. It happened in 1962. It happened in 2012. And sadly, it will happen again. We hope you enjoyed this episode. It's about the amazing power of Mother Nature, the amazing resilience of the people of New Jersey. Stay tuned to NJTV for more tales of the Jersey Shore. We'll see you here Memorial Day 2013 for the grand opening of the new Belmar Boardwalk. This is Emil Salvini. Thank you.
You know, through this whole process, we've had the opportunity to work with Tales of the Jersey Shore, both before and after the storm. Before the storm, it was great to highlight what was existing. After the storm, it's important to highlight what we're doing and what's going to happen in the future. And I hope Tales of the Jersey Shore comes back and sees our future progress. And it's so positive for our community and for our residents to see what we're doing and to see it on programs like Tales of the Jersey Shore.
Tales of the Jersey Shore is made possible in part by a generous grant from Greenwich Letterpress, proud third-generation printers with their roots in the Garden State. Greenwich Letterpress is pleased to support programming like this and to assist in documenting the history of their beloved Jersey Shore. Located in historic Greenwich Village, New York, more at greenwichletterpress.com.